Okay. All right. So welcome, everyone. I know most of you know me, but I'm Tom Hernandez. I'm the Associate Director of Career Services and the career coach for all of you. And I know I've been having some great conversations about your capstone projects and your searches. Last month, during our info session, you got a general overview of capstone, and we shared some advice on what makes a good project and how you can go about searching for one. You also heard from some of our recent grads about their experiences and how they navigated securing their capstone and what the process looked like for them. We did record that, so if you weren't able to attend, I will drop that in the chat at the end and our resource folder that we have in 1220, so you can definitely watch that. It gives a lot of great general information about the capstone project. But today, I'm excited to be here to kind of help you hear from our 5 wonderful faculty advisors about capstone. They're each going to share an overview of how they approach their specific capstone sections and what you can expect from their classes. And they'll also give you some advice and tips on how to develop a scope for your project that will meet the academic requirements for capstone. We're also going to have some time for Q&A at the end, and feel free to drop questions in the chat as they come to you. So I'm just going to share the agenda really quickly here. So we'll be hearing from our 5 MPA Capstone faculty advisors. And then before we end, after questions, we'll just give you an overview of next steps and what you can expect in terms of the capstone process for being placed in the specific sections. So I'm gonna stop my share actually so that everyone can see all the attendees, and pass it over to our wonderful faculty advisors. Would anyone like to volunteer to kick us off? Dan, yes, go for it.
I am Dan, and I'm going to exert extreme self-will and put down my yogurt. Welcome, everybody. I know a bunch of you. I'm looking forward possibly to meeting some of the Summer B folks, Summer A folks. Hi, I get it. You got really sick of me this summer, so I don't really expect any of you to want to be in my section. I'm joking. The first thing I want to say is my expectations for what your project should be. And I am deeply committed to multi-goal analysis, which here for many, many years, but possibly not many more years, we have referred to as the 8-fold path. It's as many folds as you want it to be, but basically what it is, you've got a bunch of alternatives, different ways of solving a public problem. There's a set of criteria that are basically the things that matter. How well does it solve the problem? Does it affect, disadvantaged groups in some negative way? Is it politically feasible? Can you implement it? All of the things that matter. And you're going to judge the different ways of solving the problem according to these different criteria, confront trade-offs between the criteria, and choose what you think is best for society, taking all things into consideration. That is what a capstone project should be, in my opinion. And if you do join my section, I will do everything in my power this semester to make sure that you've got a project that fits into that framework. And if you absolutely insist on taking a project that doesn't, then we'll figure out a way for you to add some component that gives you the opportunity to learn about multi-goal analysis, or rather more about multi-goal analysis. Things about sort of what I have to offer or how I approach this. First of all, I am sort of pigeonholed as the benefit cost guy. It's extremely unlikely that you will succeed at doing an actual benefit cost analysis for your capstone. But if you insist, you don't need to be in my section. I will advise anybody, anywhere, at any time on benefit cost analysis. So don't join my section because I'm the benefit cost analysis guy. What I do have to offer, based on my expertise in benefit cost analysis, is how to project outcomes using simple mathematical models. And I am going to teach a decent amount about how to project outcomes, which I think is not always at all obvious and usually the hardest part. I also really insist on students selecting criteria that actually address all perspectives on the problem. And we'll talk a lot about what should matter to you or to your client, even if it's not what you come in the door caring about. I'm also really, in my opinion, the enemy or the twin enemies of good policy analysis are confirmation bias and over-optimism. Most students take a project on a policy that they have some preconceived predilection for. And the tendency to select and interpret information in ways that confirm our pre-existing beliefs is overwhelmingly powerful in all human beings. We do it as a matter of survival. And in my view, you need to understand it, you need to root it out. And once you're aware of it, if you don't root it out, you're not doing policy analysis anymore. You're just trying to get what you already know you want, which I will push you very hard to not do. Optimism, over-optimism, for me is closely related to confirmation bias. We all have a tendency to think that our good ideas will have great outcomes, even if we have very little evidence that they will in fact have strong good outcomes. So I will push you to confront all of that and do, you know, a realistic, clear-eyed analysis. I like to conduct informal group therapy in my section. There's a psychological dimension to any occupation. And one of the things that I like to pay a lot of attention to is problems with lack of confidence, which, you know, I mean, anybody in academia who tells you that they've never experienced imposter syndrome is either lying to you or an actual imposter. And so we'll talk about that a lot. We'll talk about the psychological challenge of making recommendations when you don't feel like an expert, all of which can really get in the way of actually making a difference in the world. I put a lot of effort into knowing what's going on in each student's project. I like to try to understand the problems that students are facing as well as they themselves do, which doesn't mean I'll understand the project, but when you're up against some kind of puzzle or obstacle or hurdle, I see it as my job to understand that as well as you do, and well enough to be able to help you find a solution. I have once in 15 years found myself up against an actually unsolvable problem. And it was because the client organization was owned by a family and they hated each other. And they were in Colombia and there really was actually nothing to do about it. But short of that, we will, as Hannibal said to his generals, when they were invading Rome over the Alps on elephants, we will either find a way or we will make one. So that's it. My reputation, I think, is that I'm a hard ass. And I've spent a lot of time trying to overcome that reputation and I've failed. So I've just decided to embrace it. I'm a hard ass, but I try to be humorous about it. So look forward to seeing some of you in my section.
All right. Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing that. Who would like to go next?
Well, I'll go next then.
Okay, thank you, Hector. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I know all of you quite well since you've all taken a number of classes with me in the summer. and I will be incredibly happy to see some of you, which I inevitably will see some of you in my class in the section for the capstone in the spring. The capstone for me is really the crown jewel of the program at GSBP. It is an extraordinary opportunity to work on a real problem for a real client with deadlines, with client requirements, with academic requirements. So it really makes you take everything that you've learned at GSBP and put it together and marshal all of your wits and all of your capabilities in order to do hopefully the best work you've ever done to date, which will only be superseded by the next piece of work that you do, which is going to be even better. So that's why I really love the capstone, because it's this great opportunity. The way that I run my section is that I try to give you, I try to serve as your coach and kind of, more like your coach, and trying to help you to keep on track of the things that you need to do in order to get to the finish line. And that's as much a sports metaphor as I'm capable of, because I am not a very sports oriented person. I'll leave that to my colleagues who actually know how to play something. So the basic idea is that we have some assignments, and almost every session we have an assignment due. And these are short assignments, they're short memos. Each memo is designed to make you think about your project at a level that you're not ready to do it yet. So it's really pushing you forward, making you keep ahead of yourself, think through the next item that's going to come up that you have to think about. They're deliberately set up that way. Like the very first time that we meet, I'm going to ask you to come with a problem statement, which of course you don't have it yet, right? That's why I'm asking you for it. I want you to think about it, and I want you to put your thoughts on paper, as preliminary and half-baked as they are. That's exactly the point. So those memos are not seen as final products. They are seen as intermediate thought pieces that help you to engage with the work that you're doing, and also are the means for detonating a conversation in the class between all of us. So I like us to meet the whole time, the whole class. I don't break us up into groups, and I don't do individual consultations or small group consultations during the class sessions, although I do plenty of that in my office hours, because what I found really works is to create an environment within the class in which everybody understands each other's projects to a certain degree, and actually to a pretty high degree after you've been doing this for a while, and can contribute to everybody else's learning. So what we do many times, not every single session, but on the few occasions, is I set up what I call Socratic circles. So basically, I distribute the memos that you will have written two days before class. I distribute them. And we choose 2 people to read each memo. And then those 3 people, the person whose memo is being read and the other 2, sit down, are there in the classroom, and they discuss the memo. I give them some questions to discuss, and then the whole class participates. And then we play musical chairs, and we basically do that until everybody's memo has been discussed. That mechanism, which I brazenly stole off of my kid's middle school teacher, has worked actually really well, because it makes sure that everybody understands each other's projects to a good degree, and also it breaks down that barrier that is often present, which is that people don't want to criticize each other's work, even if it's constructive criticism. There's a reluctance to do that. And so by showing this and doing it in a systematic way, we sort of normalize the fact that it's important to give constructive and good faith criticism to other people's work to help them along the way, because none of us know all the answers and everybody's looking for some guidance. So we do that throughout the semester. So you'll have these assignments, and then we'll have several opportunities for you to present the work that you're doing to the class, the actual work you're doing. For example, we have a session on models, and where I ask you to show us what are you doing, what kinds of models are you using, whether those be quantitative models or qualitative models, stories, narratives, whatever it is that you're using to make sense of the problem that you're trying to deal with. We want to hear about it so that we can also give you some opinions and help you along the way. We also have a presentation of your final, well, near to final product that towards the end of the semester. That's a longer presentation, incredibly useful for getting feedback from all the members of the class. And then you have you've got two important deliverables. One is a sentence outline, which is the opportunity for you to give me a document that is about 1/7 of the size of the final paper, but that is full enough, fleshed out enough that I can give you substantive comments on it. And then the final deliverable is the paper. We also do a project management exercise at the beginning of the semester to help you organize yourselves, to help you identify what are the requirements that your project has to meet, and what are the different steps and stages and activities that you have to do. What I try to do in the classroom is just really try and get you to collaborate, to speak to each other, to give each other constructive criticism. And with this group, I have absolutely no doubt we're going to have an amazing semester, because you are very, very active, very participative from the very first day that you arrived at GSPP. So I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic semester. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Hector. All right, 2 down, 3 to go. Who would like to go next?
I say Erica should go.
Hector's the boss. Erica, are you up for it? You're on mute.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So great to see you. I have met all of you at orientation, but only got to teach the remote students the Eightfold Path this past summer. I do actually have some slides. Let me see if I can. Yep, I can share. Hi, I'm Erica. So just wanted to share a little bit personally. I grew up in Chico, California, which is north of here, a bit of a sort of small town, and have also lived really rural. But I've been in Berkeley for 20 years, so I feel like a real Berkeley resident. I have 2 kids that are the love of my life, and I always have bonus kids in the house that are also the love of my life. So sort of something along the lines of foster parenting, but usually not formally through the system. So that's a little bit about me personally. These are my pets. Matt Chapman, Freddie Mercury, and Luna are my other loves of my life. And then in terms of my background, I did do my PhD here at UC Berkeley. Actually had some classes with Dan and Mia Bird and Amy. So some of us have been here for a long time and have had some of the same teachers that you have had, actually. So what that means is I had a experience with peers actually doing the capstone. And I've also, some of those peers who I got to watch doing the capstone are now your clients. So I can really hear and see it from both sides, both from the student perspective and also now from the client perspective. So classes I teach include policy analysis. I do a lot with race. My area of real specialization is qualitative research methods. So just like Dan mentioned, he helps people with cost-benefit analysis. I'm absolutely here to help you with qualitative research methods. I've in the past done kind of a brown bag at the beginning of the semester, or even at the end of this semester, to just talk about like what software you might want to think about if you do have a qualitative research project. I also know a fair bit about social welfare policy, and currently my area of research and work is on reparations. And I I did a stint before coming back to policy school with public sector consulting for Deloitte. So I also bring kind of that coaching consulting type sensibility to this work. So those are some of my areas of research. I also know more than I want to about issues of like building electrification and decarbonization, especially when it comes to California, simply because my partner is an econometrician working for the Lawrence Berkeley Lab, and I hear more about it than your average social welfare person. So I've seen a fair number of capstones over the years that are not in my research wheelhouse, but I'm beginning to acquire some subject matter expertise, even though I don't do that work myself. So just sharing that as well. In terms of how I approach my sections, I think we all do them quite similarly, which is a series of mini memo assignments to keep you moving. So I think I really like a mantra that I heard from Hector through a student who was like, Hector says, like, just write something, anything to keep yourself moving. And sort of amazingly, if you do a few pages every week, suddenly at the end, you have a whole thesis that you have created, a whole capstone that you've created. So I think I really appreciate that mantra of just like doing a little bit as doing a little bit, bit by bit, like step by step, you get there. In terms of how I conduct the sections, I do a combination of everybody sort of sharing as a group, as well as some small group breakouts. Oftentimes there's a formal structure where peers are helping each other out. So like you might be assigned to a cohort subject matter expertise area, or perhaps a methodological overlap that you might have. And so we'll do breakouts for more in-depth sort of consultative help and coaching help with each other, sharing updates and ideas. I do have a few guest speakers, and I would describe my approach as Freudian, as in we're co-creating and co-learning together, and very collaborative. So that is a little bit about me. I will stop the share, and I think you can't go wrong. All of the people that are available to you are fantastic, and you will have so much fun in whatever section that you end up with. So that's all that I wanted to say for now, but happy to ask any questions along at the end. So I'm going to pass the mic to Peter.
Thank you, Erica, and hello to everyone. I see a few familiar faces from my econ class that is currently underway. I was just updating the midterm for you guys for next week, or not to panic you, week after next. So as some of you know, I joined the GSPP faculty just this past summer, so I'm not steeped in how GSPP has been doing capstone projects, but from listening to the last 15 minutes of description from my wonderful colleagues, I'm confident that my experience actually does fit very nicely. So I was at the Trachtenberg School of Public Policy at George Washington University for the last 12 years. And our students there also did capstone projects every year. These were MPP students, Master of Public Administration students, and environmental policy students. And I taught capstone for all of them. And my substantive areas or policy domain areas of interest and expertise are in U.S. environmental policy and international climate policy and science and tech policy. But I have supervised capstones across virtually all policy domains. So just this past spring, for example, I had projects related to policies for incarcerated youth who were in periods of deep personal grievance, a project with the DC Abortion Fund on the changing abortion funding landscape after Dobbs, and another one on how to teach financial literacy skills to soldiers in the U.S. Army. And I have found that, and this goes back to something that Dan Ackland was saying, with that the toolkit that you learn in policy school is not domain specific. The analytic tools, the multi-criteria analysis, some of the other tools you learn are applicable across the board. So I would expect to be able to help just about any student on any topic. Although clearly, as you've heard, we have a pretty amazing group of instructors, and certainly if somebody has one of the instructors has a expertise in a domain you're really interested in, then by all means certainly go down that path. But if for scheduling reasons or whatever you end up with me and it's not environmental policy, I think I can give you what you need. I would echo most of what's already been said. That was one of the reasons I was hesitant to go first. I'm not that shy, so what I was waiting to do was to let my colleagues fill in most of the details. So there's only a few things I would toss in here. In my experience teaching capstone, one of the very most important first steps is to really get crystal clear on the research question, the analytic intellectual puzzle you're trying to solve with your project. And it could be, in the traditional classical model of policy analysis, a policy problem. But it could also be an existing program that people suspect is not really working well. And maybe we need more of the tools of retrospective program evaluation. And we'd want to apply that kind of a framework or a lens to it. As Erica pointed out, maybe we need a real kind of open-ended qualitative approach to the project, and we use those kinds of tools. So there's this symbiotic relationship between the research puzzle you're trying to solve and the tools you choose to try and attack that problem. So I think what's really important in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the semester is to get completely clear on what problem, or I should say, not problem, what research question you're trying to answer, and then what tools you're going to use. And then from that, we can craft a project that's going to work well for you and for your client. Before I went and got my PhD, like Erica, I was in the for-profit consulting space. I spent 20 years actually in Washington, D.C., consulting for clients in government. And there it's a matter of, profit and loss, commercial enterprise. Projects need to be clearly defined and intelligently executed, or the client's not happy, or we spend way more money than the budget. So I spent 20 years making sure we defined projects that could be executed within the time and resources available. So that's another piece I think I would bring to this, sort of that project planning piece. And I'm also a believer in group work and in individual work, and we need to mix it up throughout the semester, and also creating interim deliverables for you so that it's not like you spin your wheels for 12 weeks and then write a 30, 40-page report in 2 weeks. You will write the report over the course of the semester so that it's not a big heavy lift at the end. So those are my kind of off the cuff remarks. As I say, I'm pretty much going to be doing things the way my colleagues are doing them.
All right, thank you, Peter. So Todd, that leaves you.
Great.
Pass it over to you.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to see everyone again. Can't believe it was back in May and June when I was hanging out in Berkeley. That is the downside to living in Idaho, is that I don't get to enjoy Dan Ackland's humor on a daily basis. I miss it. So this is my 7th or 8th year of doing the capstone, in addition to actually being a student in the capstone, where Hector was my advisor, very challenging advisor. But I think all great comments from everybody here in terms of the approach to the capstone. Fundamentally, I think the eightfold path is it's a great decision-making process. I mean, I've used this as a student, I've used it as an instructor, I've used it as a CEO, I've used it as a legislator, and I think it really is a good, rigorous way to solve these complex problems. And I think just coming away, first and foremost with eightfold path as the understanding how to make complex decision processes or make complex decisions using the eightfold path is I think kind of priority number one. I think priority number two on this is making sure you do a capstone in an area where you want to take your career. You may, be getting your MPA, want to stay in the same line of work. You may be looking to transition to do something else. This is a great opportunity to jump in, particularly into a new area where you want to establish yourself. You could deep dive on a project, and maybe this is somebody that, the client could be somebody that you want to get a job with post GSPP. So really think about that and think about sort of, both of those opportunities. Just in terms of the eightfold path, as Hector and Erica and others were saying, it is all about the problem statement. I led a call 2 days ago with a bunch of folks from Department of Energy and the Idaho National Lab and a bunch of stakeholders in Idaho, because we're looking at policy levers to better develop the state's geothermal resources. And this is some legislation I want to bring in the next session, but we spent half the call just on the problem statement, just chewing on the problem statement, looking at it from different angles. Are we accounting for everything that we want in the problem statement? Is there too much, too little? And it was just that exercise was really important in terms of grounding all the stakeholders on what we're trying to achieve with the legislation. A couple of other quick thoughts here. I'd build on Hector's analogy of being a coach. I feel like a coach when I'm doing this. I'm also at times, that grumpy person in the corner of the conference room who disagrees with everybody and doesn't think there's a problem and doesn't think we need to change everything. So, I know when you're coming up with these policy solutions, deep in your heart, this is the right thing and it's brilliant, it's going to make everything better, but you got to solve for the grumpy person in the corner of the conference room. And that's, sort of what I try and push back a little bit on policy solutions. Don't solve for yourself, you're solving for the other stakeholders, often the challenging ones. The pace is going to feel hard, but Erica's absolutely right. It's just about moving it forward little by little. You're not going to probably feel like you're ready to tackle some of the assignments in the course, but it's really effective in just keeping you on track to get this done. I would sort of think about the capstone as breaking up into thirds. The first third is the research and understanding the issue. The final third or the middle third is actually writing it and doing the work. And then sort of leaving the final third for that, really polishing your analysis and thinking about all the ways that your good ideas can go wrong, and how do you get ahead and mitigate those. And then just in terms of my section, you guys are a brilliant group. I love the capstone. This is so much fun to hang out and nerd out on all these hard policy problems. But it's really about sort of leveraging the MPA hive mind, if you will. And everybody's feedback is so important to the quality and the quality of the time spent in the capstone sections. My section is 100% online, unless folks want to come out to Idaho, and you're more than welcome. And we'll do it in the evenings. This happens after I'm, finished my day in the legislative session. And I promise not to overwhelm the class with Idaho politics. But some of it's going to bubble up no matter what. So anyways, that's it on my section, and look forward to working with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you, Erica, Dan, Peter, and Hector for those amazing overviews and for providing information about what's unique to the way that you approach each section. We definitely have time for Q&A. I just want to give a little bit of an overview of what will happen next. So you've heard from each of our faculty advisors. You'll then get the opportunity to rank the order of sections that you're interested in. We're going to be sending out a form for you to fill out early next week that will have each of the capstone sections along with the specific date and time that each section is taking place. And you'll get to rank order that. And we really try our best to make sure that you get one of your top choices. But as I think we can all attest after hearing these wonderful presentations, you're in good hands regardless of which section you end up in. I also want to thank Todd for mentioning the career piece to this. If you haven't had an opportunity to meet with me specifically to talk about your capstone and how it fits in with your career goals, please schedule time with me. I've had a number of conversations and I'm happy to be a thought partner and a resource throughout the process. I'm also going to drop a link in the chat right now to some of the documents and resources that we have in our 1220 platform that could be helpful, both as you think about your capstone project, but also as you start connecting with potential clients. We have a wonderful one sheet that gives a broad overview of what the project is. You can share it as you do your outreach with potential clients. It includes a timeline, some logistical pieces about it, what makes a good project, and it talks a little bit about what responsibilities are as well. So make sure that you take a look at that if you haven't had a chance to. I know that Annie has been answering a number of questions in the chat, so I think we're pretty good and caught up on all of those. But if you have a question for the group, for me, for Annie, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute, and we can take some questions for the next 15 minutes. David, yes.
I just got a quick question since we have a big silence and people can think while I'm speaking. If we are remote, is there going to be a place that we can indicate that on the form just so you guys know that we need to be placed in a remote capstone class?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct, David. We target the remote students for the online section, but we'll make sure that you have a place on the form to indicate whether you need to be in an online section or not.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I see you, Emily.
Sorry, I can't find the hand. That's the thing. So I have a question. Are we going to be meeting before the spring with our advisor, or are we sign up, see you later? I mean, I would love to talk to somebody about my ideas before I sign up with the wrong person, or that whole thing.
Hector, you raised your hand.
Yeah, so that's a very important thing that you mentioned. You have to get your advisor's approval for the project that you're going to be doing. And so, yes, you want to meet with your advisor. Each one of us has different setups for that. I ask for you to first send me a very short little memo that indicates at least your top 2, if not top 3 choices. So I want you to actually go out and if at all possible, have a choice, have to choose between 2 or 3 different projects, think about it, and then come and discuss it with me. And once you've decided which one you want to take, and you've got the confirmation from your client, you just let me know, just send me an email so that I know that you've chosen a project. That's very important. And the expectation is that is something common to all instructors. You're supposed to get their approval before you sign on to do a project with a client. And this is really important because sometimes projects are just not really a good fit for a capstone. In some cases, we've seen these cases before. Unfortunately, a lot of projects that are offered by on-campus units, academic units, are really not good fits for capstone projects because what they want really is a research assistant or somebody to do a literature review or somebody to conduct even data analysis, but without any clear policy implications. And we really want you to steer clear of those kinds of projects and really focus your energies on finding a project that is for a client who has a vested interest in getting something done, has a real problem on their hands, and is open to listening to some suggestions, some recommendations from our student consultants. So that's why it's so important to talk to your advisors and to get their approval before you sign up for a project.
Hey, Hector, if I could just jump in. Again, I don't have the GSPP specific experience, but I'm sure it's going to be the same. When we have students who don't get themselves organized in the fall semester, and it starts to roll into the spring where you're finalizing who the client is or just getting the basic scope of the project clarified, you're eating into very precious time that you'll need in the spring. So it is worth it. I feel like if you invest a few hours in the fall semester, you will save a multiple of those hours in the spring semester.
I just want to throw something in really quickly. I've had a lot of students over the years. Now, mostly these are my experiences with MPP students. So
Dan, we can barely hear you. Can you get closer to your mic?
I'll just talk louder. Can you hear me better now? All right. So I've had a lot of students say, oh, I want to practice my quant skills. I do not recommend this. This is going to be an irritating and not very educational thing for you to spend a semester doing. Think about what you can only learn in grad school, right? You can go on Stack Exchange and learn how to do quantitative analysis. But you're going to find it hard in the world. Khan Academy doesn't have, the eightfold path. So yeah, get with your instructor seriously before you take a project.
I apologize if somebody already said this, but you can meet with any of us. You like whoever you want to meet with. Did somebody say that already? So yeah, you don't have to have alignment between who your teacher will be and who you meet with to brainstorm about your projects.
Thank you, Erica. Yeah, and I know I've been meeting with folks and they've been asking about scopes of projects that they're considering. And a lot of times I'll give just general advice and feedback. But again, I always emphasize your faculty advisor is the one that should be looped in at that phase of the process as well. I see a couple of questions in the chat that are logistical questions about when students will find out about their schedule and if it doesn't work out, if they're able to make changes later, and on what date they'll know if the faculty advisor is assigned. I see that Simone is in the room too, so that's something that he handles that I don't know if Simone, if you can add any context now at this point.
I was just okay. Go ahead.
The form will go out next week. It's a Google form. It's not just multiple choice, but you can put in sentences if you have information that you need us to consider. So that'll be due probably October the 11th. We'll need at least a week to process those forms. We really do try to get everyone his or her first or second preference. But we will then release a Google Sheet, a master Google Sheet, by whatever, the third week in October, of all the classroom assignments, the enrollment assignments. We will not formally enroll you in the capstone class, although when we do, it will be consistent with this sheet that we will publish in the third week of October. We will not formally enroll you in the classes until after your spring enrollment first phase. The reason for that is the capstone takes up 4 units, and we don't want those to count against your phase 1 spring enrollments. So you will know who you were assigned to third week of October. That will be formalized after phase 1 spring enrollment.
Thank you, Simone. And now I see a few hands as well. Steph, I saw your hand first. I'm going to go back to you.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a stupid question, but it's a question I have. So I am thinking about working with like nonprofits or foundations, and I'm wondering if the problem statement or the problem we're focused on has to be like a policy question, or can it be more of like a program design related statement? I don't know if there's a clear enough distinction, or if I should just talk individually with someone.
So I can take that question. So there are different kinds of capstones that you can do. The most classic kind of capstone is one where you have a very, or almost very well-defined policy problem that is of the nature, something is wrong in this policy area. How do we fix it? Right? That's a very classic kind of capstone project, and perhaps most, if not all, capstones fall into that frame. But there's also different other kinds. Another kind Peter mentioned beforehand, which is a kind of a program evaluation type capstone. Now, those are sometimes you can do really good ones. They're tricky. You just have to be careful that you don't have to collect primary data as part of that evaluation, because especially if it's a large program, you've got to be careful, because program evaluations can be quite time consuming and can be something that you have to take many months to achieve correctly. So you've got to be just careful with that. Make sure that if it is an evaluation of a policy, of something that's already been happening, that's perfectly acceptable, but you just have to make sure that it's not too big that you can't do it within the time frame of your capstone. Another kind of project is what I would term, for lack of a better word, a strategic plan of sorts. So it's really more about implementation and thinking about how do you get from point A to point B for an organization that is dealing with a policy field, right? So it's you can't do a marketing plan, right? That's not a capstone project, or a fundraising plan. That's great. It's very valuable. It's very important, but it's not policy analysis, right? But if you're saying, okay, how can we get this new organization to solve these kinds of problems, and how does it have to be organized? How does it have to get its resources aligned? How does it have to make trade-offs between where it spends its time and spends its resources, and what are the results that we can expect from that? That is also an acceptable type of policy of capstone. So there's variations within that. Now, if you were talking about the nonprofit world, there are lots and lots of capstones that are done for nonprofit entities. It's not just for government. The trick is just to understand, what is it that the nonprofit wants to do with your capstone? Is it about maybe realigning their programs internally? Perfectly fine. That would be more sort of like a strategic plan, or that kind of capstone. Is it about influencing decision-making around a certain topic? That is more of a classic policy analysis type capstone, right? So it depends on how, what it is that the nonprofit wants to do. And all of us will be happy to discuss that with you once you come to that point, to make sure that the framing and the way that it's conceived, that the project is going to make for a good capstone, is going to make for a good experience for you.
If I could just jump in, Hector, I think there's one more kind of project that I've been seeing more and more in the last few years in capstones. And it's where a client knows it wants to do something in a specific area and needs to design a policy and asks for a benchmarking study. So I just finished a project where it was around urban agriculture in Baltimore, lots of old industrial sites that are no longer needed, but could be potentially converted to agriculture. And the client asked the students to look at, I think it was Cleveland, Detroit, and one other city very similar to Baltimore that had successful urban ag programs, to discern sort of the critical success factors in those other locations, and then use those to help design a program for Baltimore. So essentially, I would put a program design kind of a project in the mix of something we could do. But your point earlier about not taking on too big a research task is well taken. But sometimes benchmarking is what clients are looking for.
Thank you both for that. I think we're all caught up on questions in the chat, so I'll go to Darius and then David.
Oh, hey. A quick question about, I'm curious as to which advisor may have had experience with someone who is working on a capstone, but then is also considering staying in school, maybe continuing on to an additional degree, whether it be PhD or law school or something else like that. Has that happened to any of you and have experience with that, generally speaking? And also, great to see everybody again. Whoop whoop! It's like summer again. Hey, I missed everybody.
Darius, if you're seriously considering going on to something like a PhD, I will be like your PhD mom. I'll do everything I can to ensure your success. I'm a big fan of, our students going on and doing basically academic research, whether in academia or not.
Thank you.
All right, David, yourself a question.
Yes. I was curious if you had any advice as far as technique on approaching a client. I don't know if there's a template or if there's certain information that we should be conveying about parameters, what we're looking for. I know some projects potentially can be for pay, and that may be a little touchy as well. So I was curious if you guys had any thoughts on that, and based on the past, what other students have done, so that we don't get to the point where we have a potential project and it doesn't meet the requirements anyways. So if you can give a little background on that, on how we should be approaching potential clients, that would be great.
I can definitely chime in here, and then any of our faculty advisors that want to add. We have a ton of resources, and I'm going to make sure you get the correct link, and so you can navigate through all of those. And there are some sample outreach messages. There's a letter from faculty advisors that, again, just gives a general overview of capstones. You can pull from all these resources in your outreach and in your conversation with potential clients. Some capstones are paid and students are compensated, and others are pro bono. Each year it varies. And so if you need assistance or want to talk about how you can negotiate, I'm also more than happy to help you with that process too. But I'm wondering if any of our faculty advisors have anything to add or anything that they would share from previous experience working directly with students. Todd, yep.
Yeah, I think just when I approached mine, David, I wanted to work on the digital divide and broadband policy. There was an organization that was, doing a fair amount of work at the state level, and I basically just cold called them and said, "You're working in this area. I think this is interesting. Would you be my client?" And I mean, not many organizations are going to say no to having somebody help them in areas where they're already focused. Now, when it comes to getting a stipend for that, I think it's going to depend on the organization, the resources they have. I think definitely ask, and then it's just up to you to weigh whether working on this policy area is more important, or just what the right trade-offs are there. But very few organizations are going to say no to free labor or smart labor.
I would say that the right way to go, I mean, there's all kinds of generalizable wisdom that we could give, probably Tom better than anyone, but it varies a lot from student to student. What are you looking for? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And I would just say get with your instructor, advisor, or whatever we're called, as soon as possible, and dig into the details.
I want to respond to
Go for it.
I wanted to respond to Gabriella's question about preference or advice for doing a capstone for your current employer. People do it, and I think the main reason that you would want to do it is for your sanity. If you have a full-time job and you're trying to just create alignment between your capstone and your job. One reason not to do it is if in some way this program, you entered into this space because you wanted to pivot or learn a new sort of topic area that you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to pursue. So that would be a reason not to do that. But I have seen some fantastic capstones that are more or less on the dime of a person's current employer.
Thank you, Erica. We are just over time, but Chelsea, I'll give you the last question. And then again, if there's any questions after this session, you can feel free to reach out to me. Any of the faculty advisors are more than happy to connect with you and answer questions that you have.
I can actually hold my question and ask someone directly.
Is it directed at someone? Yeah, I mean, if
No, but
we
it's not
have a
quick.
little time, yep.
It's
Okay.
not a fast question. So.
Yeah, once you start getting into more of project specific questions, you can chat with me. You can reach out via email. We can set up a time to meet, and then I can help guide you. And maybe we can figure out together before faculty advisors are assigned who the best person for you to connect with is. But yeah, you're definitely more than welcome to reach out to any of our faculty advisors. I think you got a good taste of what you can expect from their sections from our session today. Yeah, thank you all so much for this, and stay tuned for the survey that'll go out early next week, and we'll keep the process moving. But for now, thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will all see you again soon.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
care.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a nice
you.
weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for facilitating, Tom.